I bring you greetings from the most wishful John G. Jones, Grand Lodge, State of California, Ancient Free and Accepted Masons. I'm yours truly. I hope you're going to enjoy tonight's show. I didn't go on live tonight. I wanted to kind of do this without having to read the chats and see what everybody else was saying on the side. So this is going to be a two-part series on the introduction to Freemasonry in its actual history, not just the 1717 part. There's going to be some information in here that some of you know and some of you don't know. So I hope that you enjoy the information I'm about to share. I'm not going to go word for word, but I'm going to paraphrase a lot of information. I would encourage you to go back and to read it for yourself so you will have a much better understanding in what I'm trying to convey to you tonight. So you can find this information, if you choose to, in the Scottish Rite volume number 1, page 20. This really details the history of Freemasonry as we know it today. All right. This gives you some information or some historical insight that's usually not passed down. And we're going to start off with the year 1649. In 1649, Charles I was beheaded. Now his wife, the Queen, and his son, Charles II, they fled and went into exile, right? They fled and went to the exile in France. Charles II, as he got older, he joined Freemasonry secretly. He secretly joined the Freemasonry and the Catholic Church, okay, by the aid of a French Mason who were part of the Catholic Church, or what they call Papists, and an English Mason who was Protestant, right? Now, he regained his father's throne, but he was later poisoned by the King of France. Now, the eldest son of the king served for 25 years. He died disgracefully. Now, in 1685, that's when he died, in 1685. Now, 3 years after that, in 1688, England was in their own revolution during that time, right? James, the brother of Charles, fled the throne. Hear me clearly. James, the brother of Charles, he fled the throne. He said, forget it. He took his family. They was out. They took up headquarters at the Jesuit College in Clermont in Paris. This college, therefore, became the leading factory for higher degree masonry. This is where all your higher degree masonry began, right here, right? Now, what they tried to do was to restore James to the throne, just as they did Charles II was restored. Now, masonry was changing. Masonry was beginning to really change. Now, in 1717, we all know the story about the Apple Tree Tavern in London, where these 4 old lodges formed the first Grand Lodge, but they don't tell you where they come from, and they don't give you members' names. But what they do tell you is that what they did was they dropped the craft masonry, and they then call it accepting, right? They dropped what you call craft masonry, and then they changed it to accepting. So what they did, they started to formulate bits and pieces of Freemasonry out of the Bible. And as they began to formulate bits and pieces of Freemasonry out of the Bible, all right, James, who was still in, James became a fugitive. As you know, he left. He became a fugitive. All right, James II. All right. Now, he was in exile. He was pretending to be of the English throne, living amongst masonry and plotting with the Jesuits in France. Hear me clearly. This is James II was in exile, pretending to pretender to the English throne and living by masonry and plotting with the Jesuits in France. All right. Now, there is where you call the chief manufactory of Freemasonry began. Period. Bar none. You can read this for yourself. Now, let's go on. So, there was no other than a person by the name of Chevalier Ramsay. Chevalier Ramsay. That is spelled Chevalier. All right. Ramsay is R-A-M-S-A-Y, of whom Mac is the leading lexicon grapher, right? He was good for words, as Masonic words as we know them today. Mac is just great for that. He was a Jesuit and a historian of the Masonic lodges, all right? Now, nobody played a greater part in the 18th century in Freemasonry than that of the Chevalier Ramsay. You probably never heard of that name, but it's Chevalier Ramsay. Okay, it's R-A-M-S-A-Y. Okay, he was introduced into the craft per se. He was a well-learned person, all right? He was brilliant. He was a Scottish Presbyterian. He was a Presbyterian, all right? See how this thing has, I'm just saying that he was a Presbyterian. I'm just telling you, all right? He was familiar with the Bible, all right? But what he did was he started to manufacture some of them same things into Freemasonry, all right? Into the Masonic degrees. He was the son of a banker. He was educated in Edinburgh University. Afterwards, he became a companion to kings, priests, and pretenders. He amassed a great amount of wealth, all right? Then he went from Protestantism to Romanism. He went from Protestantism to Romanism, all right? He was 25 years old at the time. So, in 1710, he lived 6 months in the family of the mystical Papist and Archbishop of Cambrai, all right? With whom he became very familiar with, all right? Became very familiar with the Catholic Church, with Protestants. He was just very familiar with it, and he lived amongst them. He learned the Bible. He was able to extract some of the things out of there. He began to develop Masonry, and it gets deep. So it goes on to say he became a tutor. He became a tutor to two sons for the first pretender, Charles Edwards and Henry. His heart seems to have cleaved to Bunny, Scotland. Okay, he called his first invented degree Scottish, S-C-O-T-C-A, or Scotch. All right, he offered a fortune to his relatives, but they was like, nah. He offered money to his relatives, but they was like, nah, because he was a pretender. He was a pretender. He invented degrees, and he was selling these degrees, right? Now, check this out. So Charles II, so the successor of Charles II is in recovering of his father's throne. His long reign and powerful backing of the French kings and popes and Jesuits, okay, exalted him. Their hope to the highest, all right? They want to exalt him, all right? Now, as time went on, it says in 1740, it is the Grand Orient. He pronounced a discourse between the Grand Lodge of France, manufacturing history as it went on. And his falsehood would greedily, it begins to swell. His falsehood about Freemasonry began to swell. And people was marveled at that. If any Mason can marvel at this, while this mass of a fundamental lying, he was lying. He was lying about the history of Freemasonry, where it came from, and all of that stuff. This was a forest, all right? This dealt with king, priest, Catholic, Jesuits. This is a mess, all right? So look, so it goes on and says, when France had been sworn by the new degrees, France was given these new degrees, it became necessary to codify them, all right? Ramsay discussed a code of the 6 degrees, calling them Ramsay Rite, which he attempted to force on England. He attempted to give these degrees to England, but without a successor. So these degrees all dealt with kings and the king, priest, and the Protestant and Jesuits, which is part of the Catholic Church. Masonry dealt in that. All right, they gave these individuals these degrees, right? That's what they did. So it goes on to say that in an attempt to give these degrees without a successor. It says the gunpowder plot of 1605 was to believe to be a British massacre, okay? A British mass, or they was doing some killing, to have the results of the Romish doctrine that Protestants have no right which a Papist are morally bound to respect beyond what policies dictate. And from these, and for 3 centuries, 300 years, the Papists or the priests did not concentrate a burial ground or soil of England. They did. Man, this thing is deep. They did not concentrate any ground. The church did. They was like, man, forget y'all. We ain't concentrating none of your grounds for burial, right? Now, this is all dealing with masonry. Now, it goes on to tell you that the Chevalier de Bonneville in 1754 formed a chapter of Claremont in Jesuit College. You remember when I was telling you that's where the masonry started at Jesuit College in Claremont, Paris? This is where it all started at. They started manufacturing these degrees. You can read this for yourself. So, as it go on, it says the Chevalier de Bonneville in 1754 formed the chapter of Claremont in Joshua College of that name with the rites of perfection. You know the rites of perfection are 25 degrees, but masonry was in troubled seas. They was like, masonry couldn't rest. It was, it was blowing up. It was just going, man. I'm telling you. It says now after 4 years, this Claremont chapter was merged into a council of empire of the East and West, all right, which outbridged all before it. The council of the East and West, it grew more than any other degree work, right? Then it says after that, members called themselves sovereign prince masons, substituting the general art. What they did was they substituted the general of royal arc, all right? Then it goes on to say the grand superintendent of the Grand Sovereign Lodge of St. John of Jerusalem. 3 years after that, in 1761, okay, the bubble was bursting. The Council of Empires, I'm quite sure you've heard of that degree. The Council of Empires came up. It itself burst a few years later. Then Stephen Morin, remember that name, Stephen Morin. He was a Jew who cared nothing about the religion of Judaism. He cared nothing about it, but he was Jew. All right, he cared nothing about it. All right. So what he did was, it says the rites of perfection which Masonically exalted Christ's name. That's what the rites of perfection does. It exalts Christ's name. All right. And then they said that he was selling himself, he like Judas, like for 30 pieces of silver, right? So it says in every part of the world, when the Jews came to Charleston, South Carolina, via San Domingo, and started what is now known as the ancient accepted Scottish Rite. Hear me clearly. It says, this is what it says. This is what it says. It says that the Council of Empire, given to this Jew the power to establish Ramsay rites of perfection in every part of the world. This Jew came to Charleston, South Carolina, via San Domingo, and started what is now the ancient and accepted Scottish Rite, the leading rites of the world, right? A detailed account of Morin, M-O-R-I-N, works in Charleston, South Carolina is given an analysis of the 4th degree, right? Afterwards, it says the appending Deputy General for the Northern America, completing his American works, which is an American rite. You've heard me say American Masonry, Americanized Freemasonry, in the appending of some inspectors for the West Indies. Morin disappeared. He disappeared. He went off the scene. Nobody knows what happened to him. No one knows that he died. No one knows where he was buried at. Okay. Of the first 60 deputies, inspector generals appointed by Morris, 13 were Jews. Out of the 60, right? Yes, out of the first 16, out of the first 16 deputy inspectors appointed by Morris, 13 of them was Jews. Period. And you can find this on C. Folger, Folger, historian on page 38. You can follow that. And it says, after that, it says in 1762, there is a gap. There's a gap in 1762 of some years to which the Masonic history is silent, okay, or confused. The struggle for American independence at that time was beginning, all right? So there was a war beginning to break out around that time. So in 1762, Masonry had went silent for a minute. A few years they had went silent, okay? And then it says, after that, it says Morin, M-O-R-I-N, were regaining 8 other degrees, adding in 1881. So they added 8 more degrees in 1881. The ancient Scottish Rite was formed. Okay, that's the year they was formed, in 1881, when they added those 8 more degrees. All right, and then it says it is now consisting of 33. And the first Supreme Council was opened in Charleston, South Carolina by John Mitchell and Frederick Delacour in 1801, which system now leads all others. The next year in 1802, the Rite traveled back to Europe and through an American invention. I'm just saying. It was an American invention. That's all I'm saying. And through the founders of Morin, he had only received power to confer 25 degrees, okay, which was the old Ramsay and Jewish rites of perfection. And though he was later killed, he was, whatever happened to him, he himself had begun to recall his patents and take away and given to Brother Morris. So check it out. Afterwards, they began to recall those patents that they had gave. They began to recall those patents. And then they said in 1766, by the power that was given it, all right, Morris went on to constitute chapters and councils all the same. So even after they had said that they want to rescind those patents that they had gave out, this guy continued to issue patents. And it says in 1783, 17 years after his roll call and his patents had been annulled, he erected in Charleston. He came back to Charleston. The Grand Lodge of Perfection came back and reorganized the Grand Lodge of Perfection. The Prince Masons and Charlestons, who were at first all Jews, not satisfied with the rites of perfection, okay, consisting of the 25 degrees in 1801, adding 8 more degrees, making it all in 33. So the Jews were not necessarily satisfied with 25. They added more. They added 8 more and made them 33 in 1801. You can read this for yourself. All right. Then they constituted themselves into a Supreme Scottish Rite of America in French procession. In a French procession. All right. John Mitchell and Frederick Delacour were the only members of this first Supreme Council of Charleston who were not Jews. They were the first 2 members who were not Jews, right? These facts are given by Fergo on page 41 and 42. A test by the Reagan theory in Clevery, Mackey's Encyclopedia, Art of Morin. I'm just saying, this stuff is all factored up, and you can read it for yourself. Okay, so the Council of the Empire, which was commissioned by Morin, was extinct and his patents null and void. The Grand Lodge of France, he had never had even been a Masonic authority to invent degrees and create a council. This is what they did. They forego or founded some constitution, which they said was given by Frederick the Great of Paris, dated 1786, the year of Frederick's death at 74 years of age. And he had alone been incapable of doing any business. And this superior constitution, which Kulas or Kalos, Kloss, in his theory pronounced, okay, the grand lie, the grand lie of the order. These infidel Jews, with Mitchell and Delacour, who were not Jews, founded the ancient and scepter Scottish Rite, which now owes its temples and rituals and rules of Freemasonry in America, in Europe. Okay, then it says see Kalos, page 409, and is quoted by Felagor on page 60. Okay, thus we have given from the Masonic authority a full-length moral portrayal of the Protestant-leaning system of Freemasonry in the United States and Europe. And Freemasonry today is the child of Jesusism. Jesusism. I can't, damn, Jesusism. It's Jesuitism. Jesusism. Okay? Born in France, when the French was so staunch with Lodgeism that even true-hearted Lafayette was drawn into it. His apron is now shown as a relic in the House of Washington at Mount Vernon. Okay? Then it goes on to say in 1782 and 1792 that Freemason lodges were, okay, it just gives you a historical sketch about the Freemasonic lodges. I'm just giving you some information, so I hope you enjoyed it. This is a short video, so I hope you go back, you check out some of the information I gave you. You can find it in Scottish Rite Volume 1, page 20, all the way over to 26. I just gave you a brief sketch of what I've come across. I hope you enjoyed it. Until I see you again, until we meet and greet, peace to your families. God bless you, and please, whatever you do, stay out the bushes and keep your light on. I'm out.